Talks between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang are underway in Beijing as both sides try to stabilise ties amid rising tensions between the two superpowers. Mr. Sullivan arrived in the Chinese capital earlier today, and he is the first American National Security Advisor to visit since 2016. That's during the time of former U.S. President Barack Obama's administration. Ahead of a closed-door meeting, Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Wang stressed their commitment to properly manage ties and to advance outcomes achieved during the meeting between Presidents Joe Biden and Xi Jinping in the U.S. last year.
President Biden has been very clear in his conversations with President Xi that he is committed to managing this important relationship responsibly. And the outcomes of the Woodside Summit and the work we have done since then demonstrate that we are working to ensure that competition does not veer into conflict, and that we find ways to work together where our interests align.
我希望我们这次沟通一如既往，仍然是战略性的，也是实质性的。当然，同时也应该负有建设性，努力推动中美关系朝着旧金山愿景真正实现稳定、健康和可持续的发展。
And for more, Olivia Siong joins us live now from Beijing. Olivia, thanks for joining us. What can we make of the timing of Mr. Sullivan's visit here?
Well, Shah, I would say that, this is a significant step by both China and the U.S. and is being viewed as an important talks that are taking place to get a foothold on this very complicated relationship. The talks taking place in a hotel on the outskirts of Beijing. Both Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Wang striking a rather optimistic tone in their opening remarks in front of the media. And in latest lines being reported on Chinese state media, Mr. Wang was quoted as saying he hoped for substantive and constructive talks so as to promote China-U.S. relations and to remove any obstacles that will help both sides move towards this so-called San Francisco vision to reach healthy and sustainable development of ties. Now, that referring to when the top leaders of China and the U.S. met in San Francisco last year, when both sides then after that resumed dialogue and had the series of high-level exchanges, bringing some stability to the bilateral relationship. Mr. Sullivan also saying that he was looking forward to the talks and he thinks that it will be very productive. Now, this is a high-profile trip, but as observers also say that even though there's recognition that this intense rivalry and competition between the two superpowers is set to say, it is clear that both sides are still keen to manage the relationship, at least for the rest of the Biden administration's term, also coming months before the U.S. holds its presidential election. Chinese analysts quoted in local media saying that the Chinese may want to signal to the U.S., whoever becomes to be at the helm of the country, that it shouldn't let domestic politics interfere with its foreign policy. Shah.
Now, Olivia, we know that the talks will continue over the next few days. What else is planned for Mr. Sullivan's visit?
Well, what we do know is that these discussions will go on and will cover a wide range of issues. We haven't heard too much about the substantive yet, but both sides setting the tone ahead of Mr. Sullivan's visit. We heard from a Chinese foreign ministry official saying that the talks will touch on China-U.S. relations, sensitive issues, as well as on issues relating to major regional and international hotspot issues. Now, when it comes to specifics, China is likely to raise its displeasure over what it sees as, quote, unreasonable measures against China relating to export controls and sanctions. And we do know that the U.S. has recently added more Chinese firms to its export control list in an attempt to, what it says, limit the export of U.S. technology to Russia. Taiwan also is another issue that's likely to be tabled. China likely to press that this continues to be a red line that must not crossed in China-US relations, and that it's concerned and has a firm stance on the issue, concerned that the US support and warm ties with the South Root Island is emboldening pro-independence forces there. From the US side, though, we know that there will be tough issues raised when it comes to China with regard to tensions in the South China Sea as well as over Myanmar. The big question, though, is when it comes to existing and fresh tensions, whether we will see any sort of tangible outcomes and breakthroughs from these talks. Shah.
Ollie, thanks very much for that. That was Olivia Siong reporting live from Beijing.